Ian, how much of getting Chychrun was, I'm just listening to all the different stories from other teams, the deadline. It sounds like it fell apart with this team on, with Chychrun because of whatever reason. And it feels like all these teams had a reason. How much of Chychrun going to Ottawa was that he fell to them, like they took advantage of some good fortune, versus going out and pursuing getting someone high end like that?
Well, it's a great point, right? Because I think at the end of the day, and I'm sure the two of you have been speaking about Jake Chychrun being available for, weeks and months. If you listen to, virtually any station, read Elliott's 32 Thoughts, whatever, it has been Jakob Chychrun watch. And the feeling was, well, it's going to take 2, maybe 3 first-round style assets. So when Ottawa got him and really they gave up a first and essentially 2 second-round picks, yes, I think the feeling is Jakob Chychrun fell into their lap because if you go back and look at kind of what Arizona probably wanted, Pierre Dorion came out and spoke about this on trade deadline day. He's like, Ridley Gregg's a non-starter for me. We're not moving Ridley Gregg. And so I think Arizona was probably thinking, yeah, we can maybe get a first in Ridley Gregg, and we'll do that. Pierre Dorion, held firm on his price. And I think the other thing that really helped Pierre was this was a whole game of musical chairs, right? And, once kind of Boston got their guy and Edmonton got their guy, and you start to go down the list of, who was potentially in the running for Jakob Chychrun, Gavrikov ends up in LA, and all of a sudden it's a game of musical chairs and all the other seats are taken up. And there's Pierre Dorion standing there like, hey, I still got a need for a defenseman. I don't have to retain salary, you don't have to retain salary on Chychrun. I'm not going to send you a dead contract. And I think the key too, guys, they traded Nikita Zaitsev to Chicago about a week before that deal. And I think that's important. I almost think you have to fold that in on the return on Chychrun. It's Nikita Zaitsev and a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick that they had to staple to him to get rid of him to Chicago to kind of give themselves some flexibility cap-wise for next season to absorb Chychrun.
We're talking to Ian Mendes, senior writer for The Athletic, based in Ottawa, covering the Senators. There's no question asked when it comes to whose team this is in Ottawa, is it, after watching what Brady Tkachuk did against Detroit?
No. It is. It's one thing, I think, and again, this goes back to last Monday. So 7 days ago, we weren't sure. They had 2 big games against Detroit. How are these going to play out? And, I thought, okay, if they can try and win both these games, ideally in regulation time, maybe they'll have a chance. It's not that they won those games. It's the manner in which they won those games and the manner in which Brady Tkachuk pulled this group along. And, they've started using the hashtag in Ottawa, the fans have, that is, of who wants it. And the who wants it is an homage, paying kind of homage to Brady Tkachuk at the end of, I think it was the second period of the first game. He was real upset with the Red Wings. He basically, this was like, the old, those stuff you'd see in the 70s and 80s where, it's like Stan Jonathan and those old tough guys, the Bruins, they go to the other team's bench. They're like, who wants it? Right? And they kind of challenged the entire team's other bench. Brady Tkachuk kind of went by the Detroit bench and was yelling, who wants it? Which one of you wants this? And it was like, it was really eye-opening to see him kind of do that. And, he responded. He also scored a goal in that, I believe in that game. Anyway, it was a kind of signature moment. And I think it kind of gave you a window on what the playoff Brady might be, which is really not that much of a stretch of what regular season Brady is. And it was just this sort of definitive moment that I think Ottawa realized that, we sweep these guys, we demoralize them. And in some ways, it kind of set the direction for what both teams did in and around the trade deadline, right? Ottawa adds Chychrun, and it kind of felt like Detroit really became a seller after that 2-game set.
I look at the roster, I think they know going into the season it wasn't a cup season. There's still some holes up front, but you look at that back end now. Shabbat, Zub, Sanderson, Hamonic, Chychrun, Brandstrom are the pairs as listed on Daily Faceoff. Like that's pretty competitive around the league. What do you think the offseason looks like for the Sens here to kind of shore up this team and push them to the next level?
Yeah, you know what, Justin? I think the only thing, the biggest question mark on this team in terms of well, I guess 2 questions. One is, what do you do with Alex DeBrincat? He's going into his option year, last year of his deal, RFA, you can qualify him. But the goaltending is, I think, the other big thing. Because, look, Jakob Chychrun now gives them what they believe, and I think a lot of us believe, is 4 legitimate high-end defensemen: Chychrun, Jake Sanderson, Artem Zub, Thomas Chabot. However they plug and play those guys, those are going to be your top 4 guys. That's a legitimate top 4 with most teams in the league. So the question becomes what happens in goal. I think that's the last piece now. Do they have is it Anton Forsberg? Is it Cam Talbot? Is it Matt Sogard? Is it somebody else? And really, that's going to be the last piece. And we might get the answer to that in the next 6 weeks. If Cam Talbot plays well enough and kind of pulls this team into the playoffs, I think a lot of fans would say, okay, yeah, run it back with Cam Talbot and Anton Forsberg next year. Matt Sogard might get some starts here down the stretch, make people a believer in him. So I think that's the last piece. They might need a little bit of depth here or there up front in the bottom 6, but really most of the pieces of that puzzle have kind of snapped into place, save for maybe the goaltending.
Ian, before we went to break, asked our producer, Sammy McKee, who's the best centerman in Ontario, Austin or Tim Stützle? You should have seen the look he gave me.
Come on now.
Look, the answer is Austin Matthews, right? It is, because Austin Matthews coming off a Hart Trophy season, and I know he's had injuries and he's not producing at the same rate that he did last year. Look, if you had to win one game tonight, yeah, you're probably going to take Austin Matthews. But the needle is pointing up on Timmy Stützle, and I think what's really exciting is you're seeing him produce at a, what translates into roughly a 40-goal, 90-point season. He's on his entry-level deal, and the new deal kicks in next year. That's what's exciting. I think we've seen the ceiling on Austin Matthews, and that's a high ceiling, right? Like, that's 60 goals. That's Austin Matthews' ceiling. That's a pretty darn good ceiling, and he's probably going to be a perennial 50-goal scorer as long as he's healthy for the next 5 or 6 years. I don't know the ceiling on Tim Stützle, but I think we've seen that maybe the floor is 35 goals. And it's exciting. You don't know how high this guy can go. And really, if you look at the way his career has played out early on, even from right down to where he's drafted to his productivity, it's mirroring Leon Draisaitl real closely. And boy, if he ever turned into a potential 50-goal guy, 100-point guy, boy, that would, I think, potentially be the ceiling for Tim Stützle, and Ottawa would have hit a grand slam with him at number 3 in that 2020 draft.